Hello, you are listening to Talking at a Slot, the podcast about having fun playing with toy cars. Welcome, everybody. Today I'm joined by author, journalist, and motorsport PR, Nick Garton. Welcome to Talking at a Slot, Nick. Tell us a little bit yourself. I'm ahead of myself. I wrote it and I'm ahead of myself. Nick and I race, off to the typical start. Nick and I race together occasionally at Farnborough Club, very occasionally, and race in the loosest possible terms because he's usually first and I'm last. But tell us a little bit about you and slot cars.
Yeah, I sort of, it feels more like part-time motorsport and full-time slot cars, really. It's been a hobby since I was 5. I was given my first set, the scalextric Grand Prix one, and Dad bought some extra bits of track because he wouldn't abide having banked corners in his house. It was allegedly for me, but he seemed to know everything. TCR used to have adverts on the TV at the time, and lane changing and stuff. And I thought, oh, that's good. I'll have some of that. And Dad was like, no, you can't go sideways with those ones. I'm like, how do you know? So that was the thing. It was always, he'd sort of sit there and watch me doing it and sort of mark my drifting. And
that's tough. I've heard of parental encouragement, but that sort of,
I know. And then he'd sort of, leave me with it for days and come back and have a look and see how many laps I could do without falling off, To finish first, you've got to finish. That was all that. And then I got back into it 20 years ago when my partner and I had 2 tiny babies, and her dad had run a slot stocks club in Essex for 30 odd years, and we had no social life whatsoever. We didn't really know that many people locally. And he said, well, there must be a slot car club locally. Why don't you go there? And it was Oxford. And so we were racing with Pedro and the gang, and they got used to me and a very sweary Essex girl and having a couple of baby cots in the corner of the club room whilst we were racing with the little ones sound asleep. And then we moved to Surrey, and eventually Gareth, who was on last week, suggested that I join the Farnham Club, and I've been there ever since, really.
Good stuff. Well, we'll probably at various points dip into your, actually, I'll say you a very rich motorsport life in terms of what you've worked at and done. So I'm sure we'll, with models and things, we'll touch on all of that. But I know, and I'm sort of leading you here, I know you've been working on a bit of a pet project with a Spirit white kit, BMW white kit.
Yes. So Avant Slot has reissued the old Spirit BMW, and it is absolutely the old Spirit BMW, which is good for our club because we have the Spirit BMWs as a class unto themselves because they don't really sit comfortably with anything. They're sort of overpowered to race with scalextrics. They're fall over too often to race with sort of sensible cars. So we just run them together. And that's fine. And then new members come, and the old Spirits are hen's teeth and cost thousands of pounds. So it's really good. The Avant Slot brought the old car back. It's the same motor, same everything. But I've got a real thing for 80s touring cars. It's what I grew up watching as much as F1 and everything else. But certainly sitting trackside with my dad, it was always, British Saloon Car Championship as it was then was our number one. And the number one car for both of us was always James Weaver, who would throw these big BMWs in absolutely sideways and just keep his foot in, and clearly having the time of his life. I think he was fairly fresh out of junior racing. It was the first big gig for him. And just totally sort of wild and uninhibited in this very nice white, silver and black CC Motorsport BMW. So it's always been a car that I love. And I noticed that Pendle had a white kit, and there don't seem to be very many of them. And then I noticed that Pato had got the decals for it, so I was like, oh well, there we are. That's sold.
The planets have aligned, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, my club car is a repaint because there were only ever 4 liveries, I think, and I think there was a Jägermeister, a Gitanes, a Bastos, and then a JPS. And the JPS was very late on, and so when I joined the club, there were only Bastos and Gitanes cars. You couldn't buy them for love nor money. I did eventually find one, and it was another Gitanes, and I needed to repaint it, so I did, because otherwise I got confused. I know.
Sorry, that's the gasping of a Gitanes fan.
Not
the actual fags I hasten to add delivery. Because the gasping of a Gitanes fan's quite similar, actually.
It comes with a shrug.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
So, I repainted it as a JPS one using Pato's decals because we were forever getting confused as to whose car we should be looking at. If you've got so few liveries and they're all identical and you haven't even got stickers on them to say what colour lane you're in, it's hopeless. So I repainted mine, and it's fine, whatever else, but the Spirit isn't, there's a few things as a model you would try to change, and so that's what I'm trying to do with the Weaver one. So I've lowered the body down a bit on the chassis, which means it needs a flat 6 motor instead of the old bulky motor. I've put slotted wheels on it so that they are a bit more appropriate size, because the old Spirit ones are a bit big, and just done it as nicely as possible. So when it's totally finished, which is very soon, I will take a couple of pics and stick them on whichever forums.
Good. Look forward to that. So it's interesting you talk about the ride height, actually, because it's one of the things with that model. I think the old Spirit incarnation is a lovely model, and there's a bit more detailing on the actual finish than there is on the newer ones, but that it just sits that little bit high. I had a kind of love-hate relationship. I got one of the Gitanes ones, and I first tried it, and I thought, this thing's too fast and it's not very stable, and kind of didn't use it very much. Plus, then it got expensive, or valuable, I should say. So I thought, the last thing I want to do is throw this expensive car off the track. But I've been using it a bit more recently, and actually, and again, all thanks to Polycar Track, because it's nice and smooth, so there's no bumps throwing the car off. It's just my incompetence. But I can do consistent laps, nicely drifting, as you say. That was brilliant. I remember I hadn't joined BMW at that point, so that was before my time. But James was still there, and I think he was just out of F3 or something, wasn't he, when he was in that?
Yeah.
So, but that I always got the feeling they knew they weren't quite competitive overall, because I think the Rovers had sort of arrived at that point, hadn't they?
Yeah.
So they just spent the race going sideways and bouncing over Woodcut chicane to just entertain everybody.
The race cars only being geeky. No, really. The race cars only had 2 valves per cylinder, whereas the road cars had 4.
I didn't remember that. Yes. Well, yeah. I guess
I only learned that the other day when I was geeking out on 635s. But yeah,
I did my one of the great things about when I worked there was you got sent on driver training, and I'm going to forget the guy's name because I'm an old git now. But it was an ex-racing driver who touring car driver, so as from like the 60s, from the 70s, and I want to say Mike Frady, but that may be wrong. Anyway, so we spent 2 days at a 635 with him, and the bulk of it was on the road doing sort of defensive driving and all that sort of police force type thing. But then he would hire Bruntingthorpe for half a day and pull the fuse out of the traction control of the ABS and go hooning around. And it was fantastic. And to this day, I still hear a little voice in the side of my head saying, something. So it was good. But yeah, it was a fantastic thing to do that. Anyway. The other thing I know you've been working on, because I've seen pictures is some 30s Grand Prix cars.
Yes. Now, I've always had a love for them, and I've got several unfinished resin kits. It was when I first joined Slot Forum and discovered the online slot community, which is 2004. All of these amazing, beautiful shapes of the 30s, 40s, 50s were there in resin, which I never knew existed, was a thing. And there were people like the late and much missed Mac Pinches, turning out beautiful renderings on a very small scale. So I've got some of Mac's stuff, and resin's always been a thing. Now we've got, of course, George Turner, who's sort of the doyen. George used to make the patterns for, I think, Corgi models, the die casts.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, wow. He used to be the man when it came to making die-cast models in this country. He's hilarious as well. We were chatting about the 70s, and he was like, "Don't ever let anyone tell you the 70s rubbish." I was there. I was quite small, but I was there. And he said, "No, 3-day week, 2 days on the dole down the pub, brilliant, and a new Capri every year." So
that paints a picture. It does paint a picture, yeah.
But the thing is, George only does very limited runs. He likes the tooling to be just so, and when it starts to, look a bit iffy, then he'll bench it, and maybe he will go back and redo it, but usually he doesn't, because probably, as we know, cars of a certain era, there are fewer and fewer people interested in them. Like I've written books about old cars, and the rule of thumb was pre 50 years, you're going to struggle to sell copies, because either people have got every book that's out there and they're on a pension and they don't necessarily, or they're dead. So, that's that. So it was always 70s and upwards.
I feel worried now. I'm on a pension or I'm dead. Okay. Yes, I may be distracted for a moment. Carry on.
So, and I think it's the same with slot cars, in that, the sweet spot, George is probably selling more transit vans, Mark II transits, than he is 1950s Grand Prix cars. So his range has actually changed. When he first brought stuff out, it was all sort of 50s Grand Prix and Le Mans cars. And now it's sort of evolving and changing. And George only makes stuff that he's interested in because it's his hobby as much as anything else. But his models have always been gorgeous, and I've always lusted after them, and I've never had the cash available when they come out, and then of course they sell out and whatever else. But there's a chap called Peter Seeger Thomas who lives near to us. In fact, he runs a club on Wednesdays between our houses.
The one in Eiffel?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been once.
Yes. So Peter's in Eiffel. He's got this mania. It's a beautiful thing. His mania is for wheels, because he can't look at a car that hasn't got the right wheels on it. And when you come to 1930s Grand Prix cars and voiturettes and everything else, that's a whole lot of spokes. And he has got exactly the right spokes for all the different types of wheels, which he has done.
Wow.
For all of George's models, because the models are such high quality.
Yeah.
And Peter has done these wheels amazingly. I mean, the patience of his other half must be beyond anything. Certainly, I can't imagine the commitment that's gone into doing this. But yeah, the right wheels for an ERA, the right wheels for are different to a Riley, and also Union is different to a Mercedes, which is different to an Alfa, and all the rest. And the wheels are beautiful things in themselves. And he sort of had stockpiled a lot of George's kits and had a few to sell if anyone wanted them. And so I did, and I bought some of his wheels to go with them. And I've been sitting on them for over a year, I think, sort of trying to get up the nerve to have a go either at one of George's out-of-production kits or some of Peter's wheels, because when they go together, it's fabulous. It's better than one of the 1/18ths that you see. But you really have to sort of sweat on it a bit. So I've been doing those. I've done 38 Mercedes Dick Siemens German Grand Prix car, a 37 Auto Union Rosemeyer's Vanderbilt Cup car, a 35 Alpha, which is Dick Siemens 36 Donington winner. And I've just been painting this morning, evidence on the fingers, the louvers on an Alpha 158 Alfetta, which I'm doing as Achille Vazzi's Swiss Grand Prix car from 1947.
I mean, it's interesting you said, because when this will sound like a complete non sequitur, but stick with me, it gets back to the point. When I was working, when I joined BMW, my then boss, a guy called Chris Willows, was really into 50s Grand Prix cars. He was into old, and they just all looked the same to me, because I was some brash 20-something or whatever. And I thought, oh, they're all dull, they're all red, and they all look the same. And then over time, and kind of drip-fed, editions of Motorsport magazine and one thing, and it must be said, particularly fresh in the mind from the weekend, Goodwood revival and everything it's subsequently spawned around the world about the kind of historic motorsport. I've seen these things much more than I ever had before, and you start to appreciate what they are, and particularly how they go, how they moved. And that's me. So now I know what you mean about the models. Now I would have never. I'm going to check myself. Have I ever built a racing model? No, I don't think I have. There's probably a few. In fact, there are definitely a few, and I've bought them going, oh, I'm going to do that, and I'm too scared to do it because I know I'll just screw it up. So I admire you for even sort of starting them, and that's why I was delighted when Cartrix did their range of. A lot of things, pretty much the sort of standard, the Alphas, the Ferraris, all that stuff, even the Bugatti and the Gordini, I think. And so I kind of bought a few of those at the time, and then more recently I've been sort of sneakily scouring the depths of corners of eBay looking for unwary relatives selling off grandpa's old toys. What's that worth there? Oh, not very much. And so they're by no means are they a patch on the kind of thing that you're building. But for me, who wouldn't build it, they're lovely. But I get the significance of the wheels, because I think I remember with the die casts. For me, die cast really changed when Mini Champs came along. Not just because of what they were making, but because they got the wheels, the look and feel of the wheels was right, and up till that point, diecast had been kind of toyish, and suddenly the model somehow or other became more realistic.
You can, touch wood, because I'm making several, have a fairly rubbish body, but the wheels make it look good. Like the Ford Capris that I make, road cars. The bodies are better than the scalextric one. They're from. They're Melolt's tin tops, which were carved by a good friend of mine, the late Martin Field. And Martin was an ex-Ford employee, and he always used to proudly tell me that when I had an MG ZT, he designed the rear wing on it.
Oh, right.
Anyway, Martin carved masters for all sorts of things, and Mel sells those. He's got a Dolomite Sprint, a Rover, a Holden, and also the Capri, which I've been using for my collection of cars from the Professionals TV series. But the Professionals had those, well, they were the gear alloy wheels, and of course nobody's made those. And I did commission some 3D printed alloy wheels of the gear variety, and they are beautiful. What you can do, I mean, it was a bit of a challenge, and Frank at GS3D did me a huge favor by doing it, and I was like, yeah, they go on all sorts of Fords, and I'm not sure he's sold any others other than to me.
Although to be fair, you have got quite a few Capris. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So the casting of the Capri wasn't Martin's finest, in my view. It's still the best Capri that's out there, and as a Capri former owner and certainly lover, I do have an eye for these things, as Simon at Scalextric knows. Um,
Yeah, it's like me with rovers and metros. It's the last thing in the world. Oh God, you can just hear them going. So anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah. So, but the wheels totally sell the car. All you have to do is paint them flat aluminium, stick them in a little scale 13-inch wheel, and boom, there you go. And it's like, oh yes, no, that actually does look like the right car now, provided you get the ride height right. So I'm sort of nervously chipping away on the body mounting posts to lower them just enough, not too much, and all the rest. So yeah,
measure once, cut. No, measure twice, cut once, all that good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. I do. Having said, in my buying up of old, one of the things I got. Do you remember the old BRM? In fact, I think it was the Power and Glory. You're too young to remember Power and Glory.
No, I'm not. No.
The Power and Glory re-releases of that BRM.
Yeah.
And I had one from the time. And I found one on eBay. It was cheap. I bought it, and it arrived with absolutely delicious spoked wheels on it, and sort of hard foam, not too hard, but foam tyres. Of course, because the wheels are round and the axle's straight and the tyres grip, it goes miles faster than any of the other ones. But it also looks beautiful. But that was again complete luck out. Somebody just chucked it in a along with the usual kind of stuff, and so I've no idea. I'll show it to you someday, because it may be the wheels I've got. I mean, they are quite mesmerising compared to the sort of quite chunkiness of the rest of the car. There's a very fine detail on the wheels.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Lovely stuff. Power and Glory, I'll raise you. Supercharged. So Supercharged was a series, I think it was 3 programs BBC did. You can probably find it on YouTube. John Watson driving the cars that up from sort of the Bugatti through to the end of the wartime period.
Got a vague. Was it round a lake somewhere, or am I? There's a bell being rung, which I think it was Alan de Cadenet.
Yeah,
and it was clearly just a path sort of thing round some lake, and he's charging about, and I'm thinking I wouldn't want to get that wrong, but that's Supercharged. No, I don't remember that one. I'll have to use it. YouTube is our friend.
Yes. That's an afternoon gone now. Well done.
Well, it's based on people say to me, "What do you do now? I'm retired." I say, "I watch old motorsport videos, and it's great." I'm watching so many now. I'm confused because I've now watched the 1981 Grand Prix season at least twice.
That was worth watching.
It was. Well, I mean, interesting cars, interesting people. Murray
I got
and
stuck in a loop of the 1974 Tour of Britain.
That sounds like a Channel 5 series pitch. But sorry, you probably. I mean, I know. I sort of think I know what Tour of Britain, but you probably should explain to folks. So this was well, you do it better than I do, but it was a rally and race, but driving around the country.
It was a loop around certainly England, Wales, and Scotland, and every racetrack and many rally stages on that route were driven. And obviously, rally stages were driven one at a time, and races were just madness. There seems to be like 70 cars on track at a time, and probably they needed 3 races. And in 74, so James Hunt had won it in 73 in a Camaro, and then in 74, he was driving a Vauxhall Magnum.
Yeah. Because he was, I remember, because when he was it when he won or when he was winning the championship, he was sponsored by Vauxhall, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
So despite Vauxhall being the UK arm of Opel / GM, the irony being, of course, the engine in his Grand Prix car was Ford. Didn't seem to matter in those days. Yeah, it didn't seem to matter.
Well, I was watching it. It was on a real Gerry Marshall bender, as I was at the time, because he was a good friend of my mum, and his son Gregor's my age, and we rub along. He's going to come to the club at some point soon, hopefully on his way to or from Goodwood. I was sort of watching, and there was a 76 documentary about Gerry with the big Bertha and everything else. And
that was we should explain that was a car.
Yes.
Again, Not that kind of video. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Gerry was a big lad, and he needed big cars. And Big Bertha was not a Vector, was it? A Victor.
Well, there was Big Bertha and Baby Bertha, wasn't there? I think Big Bertha was was it a Ventura? Is that what it was called? Something
like that. Anyway,
big four-door saloon. Yeah,
gone right off on a tangent here. 74 Tour of Britain. Gerry was in it, and he was in a Ford because Vauxhall decided to place its money on its rally men and had James Hunt. And so, as a free agent who really wanted to win it, Gerry was in a position to go, well, stuff you then, I'm going to drive a Ford. And it was him and Roger Clark in a team together. You can imagine how much chaos that was.
Formidable in lots of ways, yes.
And they sat nose to tail like Moss and Fangio in the Mercedes. These two were in a pair of Ford Escort RS 2000 Mark 1s, completely locked together, first and second, all the way through. And apparently, although we don't see it, it was decided on the last race, which was held at night, and the two of them were going round together. And then Roger Clark switched his headlights off. So Gerry thought that he had come off and slowed down a bit. And of course, then Roger got past and turned his headlights back on again.
Excellent. Oh, that's wonderful. I wonder that Steve Soper did a similar thing in one of his Spa wins. He was chasing, I can't remember who, but he turned the headlights off. Obviously, there was a bit there, and or he did stop, whatever, he stopped flashing them, and because it was daylight, he just turned the lights off and he got past. But hearing you talk about, I think clearly, Simon, if you're listening, and I think he does, he doesn't like to admit it, but I think he does. This is Simon, the product manager at Scalextric. Simon, clearly next year, special gift set, 2 Escorts, Gerry Marshall and Roger Clark, Tour of Britain 1974. There's 2 customers, there's bound to be more.
With a 1/32 scale table with lots of beers lined up on it.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That could be, I'm sure that could be easily done by the 3D printers. That would be good. That would be excellent. We probably, so people I think have wandered away off on a tangent, but it's great stuff. I'm now going to have to go and find that on YouTube. Just to kind of drag us back a little bit onto more definite slot cars, as you know, as a regular,
back down to 30 seconds.
Because I know you're a regular listener. Thank you. You might not be after this, but what
might lose a few. Sorry, Canada.
Yes, no, the Canadians are very committed. I think it's very quiet over there. As you know, one of the things is what caught our eye. What have you seen that's sort of gone, oh, that's bloody awful, or oh, I really need one of those. So, I think we probably segue out of 30s Grand Prix. I think because I think there's one that we both kind of.
Yes. So Pendle has announced this week that it's got a Auto Union C-Type, which is the V16 car used in 36 and 37. And I do know that it's actually a George Turner moulding. So, because when I was talking to George 18 months ago, and I said, I'd really want one of your Auto Unions, and you've sold them all. And he went, well, don't worry, because I've just sold the mould to Pendle. So that's good. And then I went to see Peter about buying some of his cars, and there was an Auto Union there, and it hasn't got a chassis.
Oh.
Which, is kind of integral. I was thinking about maybe, I don't know, using one of the brass kits, doing something like that. But Pendle has got a new chassis for it, which they've made using the Polycar compliant stuff. So it fits a quick motor straight away. It's sort of leading edge technology with a body carved by George Turner, which kind of sounds like the best of all worlds to me.
When you say Polycar, is that from the Polycar F1 series or just regular Polycar? As in the tiny...
No, it's the Polycar F1 because they now do sort of a universal chassis so that you can build your own F1s, or you can 3D print chassis to go under scalextric or fly or whatever F1s. And clearly Pendle's made a chassis which fits the Polycar F1 pod, and you can stick it under an auto union. Brilliant.
That's going to be quick.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be quick. That because obviously the only things I see the aforementioned Power and Glory. I think was it Power. Anyway, I've got one of the old scalextric ones. In fact, no, it's a pink car one, to be honest. So it's not even a scalextric one, which I think used the same mold, but it had the slow motor in it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm not used to those things going quickly or staying on.
What, the first open slot car meeting that I went to was the first UK Slot Festival, which was at Brooklands in 2009. And we had James May there recreating Brooklands out of scalextric track. And then we had a race in the clubhouse on the upper floor with a big wood track. I can't remember where it came from. It wasn't far. I think it was Slough or somewhere. And it was for cars which had raced at at Brooklands in period. And I built an Alpha 8C and took that. And this was, so 4 or 5 years after the first early bird meeting. And so the community, which had been growing thanks to the online, and it was amazing. And I've got videos, I think they're on YouTube, I took on the day. I was hopeless, utterly hopeless, and my car fell completely to bits. There was more tape than resin that was circulating. I did some fast laps, but I couldn't do it consistently, and every time I came off, another fairly major body component disappeared forevermore. So Nuvolari lost most of his limbs and a radiator and an exhaust. Steve Francis, who won the overall event, he whittled a beautiful Alpha Monza out of, I think, balsa wood, and stuck that on brass. And these things were absolutely honking round. They had to have, I think it was 28,000 RPM motors, handout jobs, which Sean had. And so that was your entry fee. Yeah. And Sean was sitting under Concorde, soldering people's motor wires onto their motors that they just bought to enter for hours and hours and hours. Bless him. But it gave us all a lot of fun, that's for sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think a polycar chassis under a 1930s car, well, it'll give it the same sort of power that an original auto union had, which is impressive.
Too much, yeah. I mean, I possibly, as ever being greedy, does this mean that they're going to do some more? Do you think they'll do more?
I hope so. I mean, the brass chassis that they have, like the kits from Penelope Pit Lane, they're very user-friendly, but you still probably ideally need a bit more of an idea than I've got. I've built one or two, but they're not very good. And I know that most people in that area of the hobby/sport, as it is when you go off and do these open events, if there's a class that's accessible for people, if there's a way to just screw together a polycar chassis that's adjustable, I think that's the best thing possible to make these cars continue. Everyone's now in the 3D game, and 3D chassis have dominated in slot rally. 3D chassis are what people seem to the go-to for racing Le Mans style cars or GTs. Yes, if you're interested in 30s, 40s, 50s cars, you probably are somebody that's interested in carving your own piece of brass into a chassis and whittling, and probably have a briar pipe or two. But you maybe there's a new lease of life for it all through these kind of things. And I think that certainly in terms of making an accessible, high quality car of the period and sticking it on sale, Pendle's got the right thing there. But their Penelope Pit Lane range, I was looking through them last night because I was looking to see if the chassis is available yet as a thing in itself for my auto union, and it isn't. So I've emailed Sean, hopefully. But I was going through the site and it's like, oh, that Gordini, I'd really like that. Oh, the Super Squalo, I'd really like that. Oh, I haven't got a Fiat 500, Ferrari 500. Damn, need one. Yeah. But then I'm going to have to go back to Peter and ask for lots more of his wheels, and then sit there for 2 years
I can see the Farnham boys listening, thinking, "Oh God, he's going to select 50s Grand Prix as a class." I can see it coming.
Well, we've got
They're
one of
gonna-
those for scalextric, but we turn the volts down to we go down to 10 volts, which makes the squirrely FF motor like the Cooper and the Ferrari Sharknose workable, and it makes the van. You can drive a van wall or a Maserati with the magnet out pretty much flat out all the lap, because with the standard motor, 10 volts isn't very much.
No, but I whip the magnets out of all of mine, and I usually run them at 9 volts just because it keeps it's enough,
Yeah.
Otherwise they're on, particularly the min. But which is why, again, off the shelf revelation for me was that polycar transformer that you could just change the click of a switch. Suddenly it's usable for all. It brought to life, these lovely cars I've had going, I wish they'd go a bit slower. And people would say, just remotor it. Go, what? Do you know how difficult it was just to get the magnet out? Remotor it? Anyway, and as regular listeners will know, actually they might not. I don't know if I've told the story about me blowing up 2 transformers trying to get an SCX motor to work. We'll save that for another time. Yeah, don't ever hand me something that needs electrically doing, just as a tip. It's not going to happen very well. Well, I mean, again, I think that Pendle. I've said this before. Actually, it's interesting, and again, I think with Mark and Julie do the same thing with the sort of reproduction of old parts for cars.
Yeah.
So bringing old things back to life, making them user. So you need a few parts to do it, or you need a new chassis to do it, and it's very difficult for most people to do that in a kind of one-off or two-off way. These sort of things are great for digging all that out. In a completely different way, for someone who's doing back to caught my eye was, and I'm a bit conflicted because it's the Carrera KTM Expos, which I think technically run in GT3. Not quite sure how from a homologation point of view, but anyway, I think they do. It's a German thing or an Austrian thing, and but they look fantastic because they look like the sort of thing I might have drawn when I was 18, kind of, and the liveries on them are fantastic. So, but I've just the issue, Carrera tyres, etc. But I think I mentioned to you the other day, what's made that all possible again is the fact that there's the NSR tyre, which fits straight on. If it's Carrera GT3, which for those who want to know, it's a 5208 Evo. Fits straight on. No, you don't have to measure anything. You don't have to decipher curious numbers. You just go, give me the one that fits the Carrera GT3, and it's an NSR 5208. And they're still very heavy, but they now lap, respectably close to. On my track's quite twisty, so traction really matters. Top speed's not really an issue. Traction
respectably close to an SCX.
sideways. I've got seriously. I mean, you would lap if we put it on, a big club track. The sideways would romp away because it'll get much higher top speed. But around my little, effectively, 2 or 3 table tennis table size track with lots of hairpins in it. They're not too bad. Let's say so they don't quite slow down enough, but it's good. So I probably will, but it's not really caught my eye because I pre-ordered it back in January. Is the Michael Fassbender 911, the green one?
Yes,
made famous by the.
I famously am not a fan of Carrera, but I have actually suggested.
I thought you were going to say you don't like Michael Fassbender for a minute.
I quite like Michael Fassbender when he's got his X-Men helmet on, making everything fly. But no, we almost have eradicated Carreras from the Farnham Farnborough Park scalextric club schedule. We
Except those classics that we've been running this one up in the last few weeks.
The classics were almost killed off at the last AGM because there's such a big difference between the modern cars with magnets and the old cars with magnets, because there's so much more powerful magnets that you just basically have to buy a new car. And so that was getting everyone grumpy. So we said, well, they're American cars. They're supposed to go sideways. Let's just take the magnets out. And what has resulted is just a shambles. If we get to 3 laps, it's amazing. They're just hopeless. And I went to Austria earlier this year for a rally, and there was a toy shop in town, and they sold Ortmann tyres, and they sold nothing but Carrera. So going into a toy shop with just an aisle of all Carrera, it was all digital. I went in, and the guy sort of was like, "Yes, can I help you?" I said, "Yeah. Have you got anything that's not digital?" "Nein, we only have the digital." "What are you racing in England?"
I see
Not Carrera digital.
Yes, as you say, the great tradition of accents on talking as a slot goes on. Fantastic. So I take going back to the Ortmans though. So was that a kind of thing? If you buy a Carrera, get some Ortmans because you're going to need them in 2 weeks, or what was?
Yeah, I was determined to come out of this shop having bought something relevant to my life, because how often do you find a toy shop that sells slot car stuff in this century? You don't. So I went in there, and I said, "Oh, have you got any tyres for classic Americans?" And so he went through, and we eventually found some for the only car that I've got that they fit is the old Ford Thunderbird. So it's a front motored Carrera, but it's quite low. So I'm thinking, ooh, I could steal an advantage here because everyone's running really high cars. Okay, I'll have a go. And no, it's still absolutely terrible. So
I've the few weeks I've been along, I've had to borrow a car because I've got, I think the only one of those that I've got some old NASCARs or something with the tyres are hard as this desk. And, but yeah, they do seem particular. And the combination, I think, of sort of Ninko track and with a few wiggles in it.
Yeah.
And those high, that's a real challenge. But I've tried going really slowly and I still come off. So it's, but as you say, it's kind of over mercifully quickly because the races tend not to last 10 laps. So.
But then, being a contrarian and possibly a pervert, I don't know, I've suggested that I buy...
I'm hovering over the mute button.
some Carrera GTs for A class, for the club. Because they've now got 3 of the cars from when I worked with WEC coming out. The blue Aston, the 4 horseman Aston, the pink Iron Dames Ferrari, and there's a yellow Corvette. And then we just need a green car. So I'm thinking, well, the Fassbender one, because although I didn't do Le Mans when he was there, that would be a sensible one. So there's a class, and everyone's sort of gone, yeah. And I think, we probably should have Carrera represented at some stage, and sort of cars that you could buy affordably. So yeah, I can see that probably happening for the club as club cars, but not go and buy yourself a Carrera. You'll
not be sticking it on your birthday list then. Oh, thank you, you've got me a Carrera.
No. But I'm sure you'll enjoy the KTMs.
Well, I'm going to. I think the challenge will be next time I'm in Gauge Master and they're on the shelf.
Yeah.
And it's that don't pick up. Oh, look, I've picked up. Anyway, I'm going to say we're about to run out of time, which is always the case. Haven't got through half of the things we said we would do. So I want to say thank you to you for doing this one. I'm sure we'll do it again. And we'll get even more into your fascination for 30s cars. And you've sort of hinted at...
I might have some finished to show you as well.
No, don't do that. No. I've got Airfix kits which are 7 years old and I haven't had the decals put on them yet. That's good. Anyway, thank you for that. So, as we're recording this on a Wednesday, later this evening, we'll be heading to Farnborough for the club night, and I'll try not to finish last. We know it's too soon for you to bring James Weaver along. Is it too soon? James Weaver?
I can bring him along. Yeah, I can bring him along. Yeah. I won't be allowed to run him because he'll be considered modified, so I'll have to race my JPS, but I can bring him for some laps.
Yeah. Okay, do that. And at that point, we'll say goodbye to us. So thank you to you. Thanks to everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and say goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.